Hey everybody, welcome back to my coverage of PogChamps 3. Rainn is leading his match 1-0. He only needs a draw to take the match, and he is also the rating favorite, so let's see if he can take down Michelle here. Rainn has the black pieces, Michelle Khare has the white pieces, so let's see how their second game went. If you haven't seen the first game, I'll put it in the little card up there. Check that out, come back and watch this video. This is the second game. So the game started, Michelle played d4, and Rainn responded with d6. Michelle played bishop f4, so going for a London system setup. And Rainn played g6, so kind of going for some Pierce setup, modern defense. Michelle played e3, and Rainn played bishop g7. We have bishop d3 and c5, so now we've kind of transposed into some like Benoni or King's Indian type structure. It's still developing, but we'll see what we have. We have c3 from Michelle and queen b6, so taking advantage that the fact that the bishop is not on c1 and looking at this weak b2 pawn, it's a very easy threat to miss, especially at the beginner level. You just don't notice that this b pawn is attacked. So let's see if Michelle sees it. She plays knight f3, so this does not do anything about the b pawn, and Rainn happily takes queen takes b2. It's looking like a good start for Rainn Wilson here. Michelle plays knight bd2, saving her rook in the corner, and Rainn plays queen takes c3, grabbing another pawn. So now Rainn is 2 pawns up. Michelle plays bishop b5 check, and we have bishop d7. We have rook b1, and bishop takes b5, so just trading off pieces. Rainn is up 2 pawns, so he is happy with trades. We have rook takes b5 and b6, so saving his own b pawn. However, this is actually a mistake after the following sequence: d cross c5, and after d cross c5, bishop cross b8, and rook cross b8. Now white can play queen a4, and this is threatening discoveries with moving the rook, and also threatening this a7 pawn. There's just too much, so black has to concede by playing king f8, giving up castling rights. This rook is probably going to be stuck for a very long time, and the king isn't going to be the safest either. And also, you're losing this a pawn. Queen takes a7, and this is just a very bad position for black. This rook is attacked, and it's not going to be good. And here, if you think black can play queen c1 and win the rook here, you actually can't, because if you play queen c1, now black is just totally done, because after king e2, you can't take the rook here because you get checkmated on b8. This is actually checkmate. So instead, now your queen is attacked and you have to save your rook. So the best black can do here is actually sacrificing the queen for the knight and then saving the rook. And this is just completely losing for black. So so b6, a minor mistake for that huge line, but Michelle did not see all of that, which is expected. She simply castled, which is totally fine. Castling is probably one of the next best moves. We have c cross d4, and here Rainn actually thinks he can win a pawn here, since he's got 1, 2, 3 guys on this pawn, and Michelle only has 2 defenders on it. So he thinks he can win a pawn here, but it doesn't actually work. We're going to see why here in a sec. But anyway, he plays c takes d4. He goes for this pawn. After knight takes d4, bishop takes d4, e takes d4, and queen takes d4, white actually has a winning move here. So the move is queen to f3, and you're basically trapping this rook in the corner and also defending your bishop at the same time. So you're going to lose this rook. You might lose this knight if you're not careful, because you can't even castle very quickly, and this knight is going to be pinned to your king. So this is just a terrible position. Here the best move is king to f8, and yeah, this is not going to be good for black here. So queen takes d4 was a blunder by Rainn. Michelle did not see this queen f3 move, though. Instead, she played bishop e3, simply gaining a tempo on the queen, but it worked out in her favor anyway, because here Rainn blundered back. He played queen to a4, which simply hangs the queen. So maybe it was some overconfidence or moving too quickly, or I don't know what it was, but queen to a4 is not the move here. After queen takes a4, Michelle is simply up a queen, and this is just it's going to be very hard for Rainn to survive. But can he do it? That is the question. We have knight f6 and rook b2 check, so giving this discovered check. We have knight bd7 blocking, preparing to castle. We have queen c4 and castles, just getting the king safe. We have rook c1 and rook ac8. And here Michelle decides to trade 2 rooks for the queen, which is something you can do. So maybe this rook ac8 move wasn't the best by Rainn, but it actually forces a trade, really. You can play queen f1 here, but yeah, I don't know how I feel about this move, actually. It does force the trade of 2 rooks for the queen, and you're only going to have these 2 knights left against 2 minor pieces and 2 rooks, so it's probably not the right call. But anyway, Rainn plays it. So we have queen takes c8, rook takes c8, rook takes c8, and king g7. So now Rainn only has 2 knights left. Can he still save the game? We have rook b4 and knight d5, attacking the rook. We have rook h4 and h5, rook a8, a5, saving this a-pawn. We have bishop d4 check and f6. We have knight c4 and e5, so trying to advance these pawns and also gaining a tempo on this bishop here. Michelle saves her bishop. She plays bishop e3, and we have f5, continuing to advance the pawns. Michelle plays rook a7, and we have knight f6. This knight cannot move to f6 because it's pinned. And here we have knight takes d6, so just picking up the free d-pawn. And Rainn plays f4, just trying to create some counterplay somehow. It's hard when your opponent is up 2 rooks. But Michelle is handling things nicely, so let's see if she can convert this. Bishop d2 and king h6, simply getting out of this pin and also preparing to activate the king, support the pawns with the king. So the game continues g4 and king g5, so that rook looks like it's maybe getting trapped. It can probably escape through the 3rd rank though, so it looks to be fine. Michelle plays rook h3 and knight c5. Knight f7 check, and this allows black to take this free pawn on g4, so you didn't really want to defend it with f3 because then your rook is sort of stuck, so you kind of have to give up this pawn here. We have knight h6 check, which this is a huge blunder because black can simply take the rook on h3. But as you can see, Michelle was getting low on time here. Maybe she thought her rook was somehow defended. But this does allow Rainn to pick up a rook, so now he's only down 1 rook, and he does have a pawn majority on both sides. So he has 3 pawns for the rook. It is now anyone's game still, but Michelle still has the advantage, so let's see how things turn out. Here after king takes h3, Michelle blunders immediately again by going after this b-pawn with rook to b7. A terrible blunder, simply hanging the rook. But surprisingly, Rainn does not take this, despite having nearly 6 minutes on the clock. Rainn plays knight ce4, so I guess he didn't see that he could take this rook and goes for the counterattack on the bishop instead. Maybe he's just trying to bring his pieces towards White's king somehow to create some sort of mating net. But he did not see that he could take the hanging rook. That would have totally brought him back into this game, and it actually would have given him a winning position. So that was a major missed win blunder by Rainn there. Anyway, the game continues. Michelle plays bishop c1, and Rainn plays king h4. We have rook takes b6, just scooping up that pawn. King g5, knight f7 check, king f5, knight h6 check, king g5, so maybe we'll see a repetition of moves. But Michelle is not interested in a draw, so we have a4, giving up this knight for seemingly no reason. You could have escaped the knight to d8 and avoided the repetition. So Michelle just gives up the knight here. King takes h6, which is kind of weird, but it's still winning for White. So, but now it's much closer. It's a much more even game. So we'll see if we'll see which player prevails. We've still got a lot of moves to go. So Michelle plays rook a6, knight g4. Rook takes a5 because there was no way you could defend your a-pawn for black there. And now White has this nice passed a-pawn. Maybe it's going to turn into a queen someday. We have knight c3 and bishop b2. Knight e2 check, king f1, knight d4, and bishop across d4. So white wants to go for trades because they are up in exchange, so this makes sense. E cross d4, they also have this nice passed pawn, so it's going to be hard for this lone knight to stop this passed pawn, especially when the king is all the way on the other side of this board here. We have rook a8 and d3, rook d8, so now just stopping that passed pawn, and knight takes h2 check, so just picking up this h pawn. Rainn could have picked this up a couple moves ago, but he decides to do it now, and this is also check, so white plays king e1. Rainn plays knight f3 check, king d1, and d2, now defending this pawn. King e2 on the previous move was not possible because it was defended by the pawn. But if it was possible, it would have been a good idea because it would have attacked the knight. Sorry about that. Anyway, d2 and a5, so now Michelle just wants to promote this pawn. We have knight e5, so bringing the knight over here to help stop this pawn, and a6, knight c6, and rook d6, now attacking the knight and looking to get that queen. We have knight a7, rook d7, attacking the knight. Again, very nice technique here from Michelle. Knight c6 and rook takes d2, so this knight can't really do anything to this pawn. If the knight attacks the pawn, you simply advance the pawn, so you're going to need to bring your king over there, and that's not going to be possible. This should be a clean win for white now. We just have to make sure none of these pawns become queens for black. So that's exactly what Rainn tries to do with h4. Michelle tries to stop it with king e1, h3, king f1. Rainn realizes that this pawn is not going to promote by itself, so he plays g5. Michelle continues stopping this h-pawn with king g1 and g4. And now Michelle finds this finishing fork, rook d6 check, which was available for the last couple moves after g5. So there wasn't really much Rainn could do, though. You can't move this knight, and yeah, maybe you could have moved your king off of this 6th rank first before you push this g-pawn, but it's still completely lost for black. But anyway, we have this fork, rook d6 check, king g5, and after rook takes c6, it's looking like it's all over for black. We have g3, f takes g3, f takes g3, so now we have these two menacing passed pawns. Maybe black will somehow deliver checkmate if white is not careful, because it is possible to checkmate with two passed pawns on the 2nd rank with a king supporting them. So we have a7, h2 check, king h1, king h4, king g2. So Michelle completely stops any ideas of black bringing the king to h3, and so now there's absolutely nothing that black can do here. We have h1 equals queen, king takes h1, king h3, a8 equals queen, g2 check, king g1, king g3, rook g6 check, now looking to pick up black's last pawn. We have king f4, queen f8 check, king e5, and queen g8. So I'm not actually quite sure about this move. But black plays king f5. We have queen f7 check, king e5, and king takes g2. So a little unnecessary move, but it's fine. Just picking up black's last pawn. We don't want there to be any tricks at all. That's totally fine from Michelle as a beginner. We have king e4, and now we're going to have a very, very nice ladder checkmate. Michelle should teach Tubbo how to do this. Rook e6 check, king d5, queen d7 check, king c4, rook c6 check, king b5, queen b7 check, king a5, and rook a6 checkmate. What a nice ladder mate. So Michelle gets the upset, brings it back to 1-1, and this means this is actually going to be the first Armageddon game in PogChamps. So these two players will go to a 3rd Armageddon game. The normal time control is 10 plus 5, but the Armageddon time control is 5-0. So, and also black will have drawing odds, I'm pretty sure. So if black draws or wins, then black will get the win for the Armageddon match. I don't think I have anything else to say about this game or about this match. So thank you for watching. Be sure to like and do all that stuff. Yeah, I'll see you next time.